Right now, you're lying awake at 2 a.m., annoyed at yourself, convinced something is broken. It isn't. That exact hour of restless, half-conscious lying in the dark has been happening to humans for longer than agriculture, longer than cities, possibly longer than language itself. And the strange part is, the way you think you're supposed to sleep, one solid, unbroken 8-hour block, might be the actual historical anomaly. Let's start with the number that should stop you in your tracks. For at least several 100,000 years, Homo sapiens and our close ancestors existed without electric light. No bulbs, no screens, no streetlights bleeding through the blinds. Just fire, moonlight, and roughly 12 hours of darkness a night, every night, for generation after generation. That's older than the wheel, older than written language, older than the concept of a bedtime. So what did people actually do with those 12 hours? This is where the story gets genuinely strange. In 2005, historian Roger Ekirch at Virginia Tech published a book called At Day's Close, Night in Times Past, built on more than 15 years combing through diaries, court depositions, and medical texts from pre-industrial Europe. He found hundreds of casual references to first sleep and second sleep, two distinct chunks of night rest, separated by an hour or two of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. People used that gap to pray, talk, have sex, or just lie there thinking. It wasn't insomnia. It was Tuesday, here's the puzzle. If segmented sleep was just normal pre-industrial life, why does almost nobody sleep that way today? And why do we treat waking at 2 a.m. as a malfunction instead of, historically speaking, just clocking in for round 2? For years, the popular explanation was simple. This must be our true, ancient, biologically natural sleep pattern, and modern artificial light broke it. Tidy story, only one problem. Nobody had actually tested it against people living without electricity today. So, in 2015, UCLA sleep researcher Jerome Siegel did something almost embarrassingly obvious. He went and asked them. His team studied the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia, 3 hunter-gatherer and forager societies with no electric lighting, no clocks, nothing separating them from a pre-modern night. And here's the twist that should have been the headline everywhere. They didn't split their sleep in 2. Almost none of them did. Everyone assumes segmented sleep is the deep, ancient, natural default our bodies are secretly begging to return to. But the evidence says the opposite. The groups actually living closest to how our ancestors lived mostly slept in one continuous stretch, going down a few hours after sunset and waking before sunrise. No midnight gap required. Let that sit for a second. Because it's the kind of detail that quietly demolishes a very popular internet sleep myth. You know the one. The biphasic sleep is what your body craves, blame Edison story that gets reposted every few months. Turns out the group with the strongest claim to how humans have always slept doesn't actually do it that way. So why did Ekirch find such clear evidence of 2-part sleep in historical Europe? Poor fiends. While modern foragers show almost none of it, the honest answer is nobody knows for certain, and that's a more interesting answer than a fake one. One leading idea, discussed by circadian researcher Charles Geisler at Harvard Medical School, points to temperature and light exposure. Indoor sleepers, huddled through long, cold European winters with limited fuel for fire, may have woken naturally between sleep cycles simply because the room got cold and dark for hours on end. Equatorial foragers, sleeping outdoors in warmer, more temperature-stable nights, may never have had the same physiological nudge to wake at all. Which means the real story isn't ancient. Humans slept in 2 parts. It's messier and more interesting than that. Sleep seems to bend around climate, latitude, and light, not around some fixed ancestral template. Different environments, different sleep. Wild that we spent decades assuming there was one true, natural way. And look, if someone tells you they've hacked their sleep back to some ancient pattern using a podcast and a blackout curtain, you're allowed to be skeptical. Biology is rarely that tidy. Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable for the blame modern life theory. Siegel's forager groups slept on average about 6 to 7 hours a night, less than the commonly recommended 8 hours, and with no naps to make up the difference. No electric light, no phones, no blue light anxiety, and they still weren't hitting the number your sleep app guilt trips you about. So maybe the crisis isn't that we've fallen from some perfect ancestral rest. Maybe humans have just always been mildly, chronically sleep deprived, and modern life just gave us a screen to blame it on. So let's run the timeline. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, humans sleeping by firelight and moonlight, environment dictating the pattern. Centuries ago, in candlelit pre-industrial Europe, Roger Ekirch's first sleep, second sleep, and a quiet hour of half-awake thinking in between. Decades ago, in equatorial forager communities studied by Jerome Siegel, one continuous stretch, shorter than we assume healthy sleep should be. Today, you, at 2 a.m., wide awake, assuming you're the broken one. Everyone assumes there's one correct, ancient, natural way to sleep, and that modern life ruined it. But the evidence says the opposite. There was never just one way. There was only ever sleep, bending itself around whatever night happened to look like. So next time you wake up at 2 a.m. and start spiraling about it, maybe don't. You're not malfunctioning. You might just be doing exactly what humans have quietly done in the dark for longer than anyone bothered to write down. If you want to go deeper on any of this, Roger Ekirch's book and Jerome Siegel's 2015 study in current biology are both worth reading directly. Links are down in the description.